This man smirked at the camera. But what he said next made the internet explode. And left a family in ruins. It all started in a quiet suburban courtroom. The kind where the walls are polished, dark oak, and the air smells faintly of old books and coffee. The judge hadn't even finished taking her seat when everyone felt it. Tension that didn't belong to any ordinary case. On one side of the room sat the plaintiff, a frazzled mother, named Denise Carter. 38. Sharp eyes that betrayed exhaustion. And hands gripping a stack of papers so tightly her knuckles were pale. She had come to court to resolve a simple dispute, or so she thought. And then the defendant appeared. Richard Langston. 42. Public figure, social media influencer, self-proclaimed foodie extraordinaire. He walked in with a confident smile, shoulders relaxed. As if he were just attending a dinner party rather than facing a judge. There was an aura of untouchable arrogance about him. The kind that makes a room feel slightly unsafe without anyone saying a word. The case? A viral video. One video that had been uploaded on Instagram, with over 2 million views in less than 24 hours. Richard had filmed himself in his luxurious kitchen, a golden retriever at his feet and his children's lunchboxes in the background. He leaned casually against the counter, looked directly at the camera, and said, with a smirk so precise it was almost surgical, "My dog eats better than your kids." And just like that, the internet exploded. Memes, hashtags, and outrage spread faster than wildfire. People laughed, people cried, and some parents, like Denise, felt their dignity violated on a global stage. Now, that video was no longer just a social media post. It was evidence. And the courtroom was about to turn into a battlefield. Richard didn't just insult Denise's family. He had mocked an entire community's sense of morality and decency. And here's where things get disturbing. The way he manipulated the situation afterward. When questioned by the judge, Richard smiled the same smug smile. He said, "It was a joke." A joke. But the prosecutor, a meticulous and unshakable woman named Clara Mendez, saw through it immediately. This was no innocent remark. This was psychological warfare. Delivered with impeccable timing. For maximum humiliation. Notice how he avoids eye contact with the mother. Clara commented later in a debrief. That's not fear. That's calculation. He's gauging her reaction. Every twitch, every blink, every intake of breath informs his performance. He wants the audience, both online and in this room, to feel powerless. Denise's hands trembled slightly as she set her papers down. She wasn't just upset because of the video. She was upset because her children had become props in someone else's show. And there was nothing she could do about it until today. Judge Marianne Holt adjusted her glasses. Sharp, no nonsense, and entirely in control. She surveyed the courtroom, her gaze landing first on Denise. Then Richard. Her presence alone could silence a room. This court will hear the evidence and decide on the matter of damages caused by online defamation and emotional distress, she said. Her voice was firm, resonant, and left no room for manipulation. Richard chuckled softly under his breath. Not out of nervousness. Not out of embarrassment. But because he believed, for a moment, that the system was just another stage for his performance. And here's the chilling part. Sometimes, arrogance can feel invisible. Until it crashes headfirst into reality, Clara presented the evidence. The video itself, the screenshot comments, the direct messages filled with mocking laughter. This isn't just words, she said. This is intentional harm. Emotional and reputational. The children were targeted. The mother was humiliated. And it spread, globally in seconds. Richard leaned back in his chair, crossing his legs. He smiled again. That smile was deliberate. Almost theatrical. But the moment the audience saw it, you could feel a shift. A subtle tension that wasn't there before. Something in the room changed. Because while Richard controlled the social media narrative, the courtroom was not a stage he could dominate. Denise took a deep breath. Her voice trembling but determined. "Your Honor," she said. "This isn't about likes, views, or comments. This is about the humiliation of my children. My family." And that is when the first cracks appeared. Richard's eyes flickered. Not with fear. Not with regret. But with calculation. He was already thinking ahead. How could he spin this? How could he emerge unscathed in the court of public opinion? Judge Holt leaned forward slightly. Silence fell. The room felt like it was holding its collective breath. This was the moment where psychology, social media, and family collided. And everyone sensed that this was about to escalate. Far beyond a viral insult. The prosecutor knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just proving defamation. She was exposing intent, strategy, and manipulation. Richard's body language shifted. Subtly, a hand twitched. His smirk tightened. But notice how he still avoided direct eye contact with Denise. That small avoidance betrayed something. A man who was confident in the digital world, but not in the presence of accountability. And then, the bailiff cleared his throat. The cameras in the courtroom captured every reaction. Every glance. Every subtle movement. Because in this case, the smallest gesture would speak louder than any word. And the question everyone was asking silently: could a viral insult really become a legal nightmare? Could a joke on social media backfire so spectacularly that it would expose more than just ego? Would it reveal character, intent, and moral bankruptcy? At that moment the courtroom was electric. Every whisper, every shuffling paper, every glance across the gallery contributed to the tension. Everyone watching online and in person could feel it. This was no ordinary trial. Because this was the story of how one man's arrogance collided with one family's dignity. And how social media had become a weapon in a very real war. And then, just as Richard was about to speak, the judge raised her hand. Silence. Absolute, nerve-shredding silence. It was the calm before the storm. And in that silence, everyone realized something. This case was about to go far deeper than anyone imagined. The courtroom felt smaller now. Tighter. Every face more distinct, every movement amplified. Denise sat forward, gripping her folder so hard that the corners bent. Her children's lunchbox, photos, proof of Richard's mockery, peeked out from the top. She kept her eyes on him. Not just seeing a man, but the manifestation of a cruelty that had traveled across the internet. In seconds, Richard leaned back in his chair, laxed. But there was tension under the surface. A twitch in his jaw, a slight tapping of fingers. That was a tell. Watch closely. It's subtle, but it's there. A man confident in the digital sphere, suddenly out of his comfort zone, is like a wolf in unfamiliar terrain. He knows he's being measured. He knows every motion is scrutinized. Judge Holt's gaze cut through him like steel. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence alone demanded honesty. But she did lean forward. A gesture that turned casual arrogance into nervous calculation. The courtroom fell silent. Even the cameras seemed to pause. "Mr. Langston," she began. "You are aware that social media does not absolve anyone of responsibility. You posted statements about this family with the intent to ridicule." Richard smirked. A carefully practiced, offhand kind of smirk. The kind people use to mask panic with charm. But the prosecutor Clara Mendez caught it instantly. That is not nervousness. That is strategy. He wants to diffuse authority with performance to reframe himself as harmless even while the video proves the opposite. Clara stood. Her posture rigid, her voice precise. "Your Honor, the statement is not only harmful. It is targeted, intentional, and repeated. It is evidence of malicious intent, amplified by a global platform." Notice how he frames the narrative. Playful, humorous, harmless. That's how manipulators operate. By controlling perception, they evade accountability. Richard's gaze flicked toward Denise. She didn't flinch. That subtle refusal to react rattled him more than the judge's words. People who are used to being feared by projection suddenly find themselves staring into calm defiance. They can't compute it. "This isn't just a statement, Your Honor," Clara continued, "it's a pattern of behavior. The video alone shows disregard for the emotional well-being of the children and mother. The comments on social media, the reposts, the jokes, all reinforce this pattern. This is not a one-time lapse. This is cultivation of humiliation as content." Richard shifted. He couldn't afford to. But a small sigh, a micro-expression tightening his lips, revealed internal calculation. How do you defend a viral statement that literally says, "My dog eats better than your kids"? There's no plausible misinterpretation. Not one that holds under scrutinies. Judge Holt paused, letting that sink in. Silence filled the room like a heavy curtain. Even the audience leaned forward, subconsciously synchronizing with the tension. And then she asked the first of several questions that would strip the veneer off his performance. "Did you intend for this video to be seen by the public?" Richard answered slowly. His voice even, almost rehearsed. I didn't think it would get this much attention." Classic deflection. A common tactic. Minimize exposure. Claim ignorance. And pivot responsibility to unforeseen consequences. But the timing and precision of his smirk earlier betrayed planning, not accident. Judge Holt's gaze never left him. "You are aware it has received over 2 million views in less than a day, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," he said. "Wah. And you still maintain it was a joke?" "Yes," he replied. The mother, Denise, spoke for the first time since the judge began questioning. Her voice shook but was firm. "Your Honor, it wasn't a joke to my children. They cried. They were embarrassed at school. And for days, they asked why someone would say something so mean about them. That's not a joke. It's psychological harm. And here's where it gets psychologically fascinating." Richard's body language changed subtly. Notice how he leaned back, crossed his legs tightly, hands now gripping the armrest. That's not relaxation. That's containment. The mental gears are turning. Trying to spin the narrative. Trying to regain control over the social perception he thrives on. But the courtroom's authority, combined with real human impact, forces vulnerability even if he doesn't show it consciously. Clara called up the comments, projecting them on the courtroom monitor. Hundreds of users reinforcing his statement. Memes, mockery, even replies tagging the children. "These are not jokes," Clara said. "These are targeted attacks. Amplifying humiliation. Notice the pattern: repetition, social proof, normalization. This is a textbook example of emotional manipulation through online platforms." Richard's eyes flickered toward the screen. He couldn't hide the tiniest micro-expression. A fleeting tightening around the eyes. A hint of panic beneath his otherwise composed mask. That is what happens when you face irrefutable evidence of intent. Control slips. Even for someone accustomed to controlling narratives. Judge Holt leaned forward again, her voice firm, deliberate. "Mr. Langston, would you like to respond to the claim that your actions caused distress to the children and their mother?" Richard paused. His mind raced, weighing public image versus legal honesty. Finally, he spoke. I didn't think it would affect them this way. It was supposed to be funny. A classic justification tactic. Intention versus impact. But courts do not rule on intent alone. The impact is quantifiable, observable, and real. The mother's testimony, the viral video, the social media commentary. It all forms an unbroken chain of evidence. Clara leaned in. Voice calm but pointed. "Your Honor, we are not debating humor. We are evaluating the real emotional consequences of this statement. The children experienced humiliation and anxiety. The mother faced public scrutiny. And all of this was precipitated by the deliberate framing of the statement to maximize social engagement. That is intentional. Psychological harm." Richard's hands twitched slightly. That small motion spoke volumes. He was calculating every next word, every facial nuance, every micro-gesture to avoid the full weight of accountability. But here's the key. In high-stakes psychological drama, micro-expressions betray the truth faster than words ever can.
And Denise.
She sat there, resolute, visibly exhausted, but anchored in a sense of purpose. Her eyes never left Richard. Every twitch, every smirk, every faltering syllable he uttered was absorbed by her. Translated into justice she had been denied online. The tension reached a point where the courtroom felt like a living organism. Each breath, each glance, each shuffled paper, adding to the suspense. Even the spectators' subtle movements, leaning forward, whispering quietly, created a collective anxiety, as if they knew something was about to break wide open. Judge Holt's gavel rested untouched. She did not need it. Control was asserted through gaze, presence, and precise questioning. And now, the pieces were aligning for the next crucial phase. Discovery of the broader manipulations. Behind the viral video, the hidden psychological tactics, and the potential exposure of more than just arrogance. It might reveal deep character flaws, public manipulation strategies, and the true cost of social media cruelty. At this point, the entire courtroom felt it. Something wasn't right. Something deeper was at play. Beyond mere words, beyond viral outrage. And the stage was set for an investigation that would not just examine the statement, but the man behind it. The courtroom lights seemed to hum with intensity as the next phase began. Judge Holt leaned back slightly in her chair, signaling the start of a more detailed examination. The room was quiet except for the subtle shuffle of papers and the faint whirring of cameras, capturing every expression. Denise Carter's hand still gripped her folder tightly, knuckles white. She was not just a witness of her family's humiliation. She was a shield for her children's dignity. Clara Mendez, the prosecutor, began systematically laying out evidence. Screenshots of the Instagram video. Timestamps showing when it was posted. Comments tagging the children by name, and subsequent reposts across multiple platforms. Your Honor, Clara said. This is a pattern. Not an isolated incident. Notice how each element builds upon the other. He leveraged social media algorithms, knowing the content would be widely shared. That is strategy. Psychological manipulation, in its modern form. Richard Langston remained seated, composed on the surface, but subtle signs of tension betrayed his confidence. A foot tapped lightly under the table. His hands flexed against the armrests. Classic behavior of someone performing control, while internally calculating damage. Notice how he avoids eye contact with Denise whenever a particularly incriminating screenshot is projected. That is not fear. It's calculation. He is assessing reactions, searching for weakness. Judge Holt paused, allowing the weight of the evidence to sink in.
Mr. Langston,
She said, her voice steady and controlled. You admit you made the video? Yes, Your Honor, he replied. Voice casual but eyes flickering briefly toward Denise. That it would be publicly shared? I didn't think it would blow up like that. Richard said, the words carefully measured. Clara leaned forward, her tone deliberate. Your Honor. This is a common tactic among manipulators. Deny knowledge while maintaining plausible deniability, shifting focus from intent to outcome. Yet here, the outcome. The children's distress is undeniable. Denise spoke, her voice trembling but firm.
Your Honor.
The children haven't stopped asking questions. They've been bullied at school. They've been called names, laughed at by classmates. My youngest asked why someone would say our family isn't good enough. That's not a joke, that's a violation. Richard's expression flickered for a split second. A micro-expression of frustration. Then he leaned back, attempting to reclaim composure. But Clara had already caught it. Every subtle gesture, every fleeting emotion is data in a courtroom like this. Behavioral patterns are as much evidence as the video itself. The first major witness was called. A child psychologist, who had been reviewing the children's behavior after the video went viral. Dr. Elisa Monroe entered, carrying her notes. Calm but authoritative. She addressed the courtroom directly. Children experience humiliation differently than adults, she said. Even a perceived joke from a trusted adult can create lasting anxiety. Exposure to public ridicule, amplified online, has measurable psychological effects. In this case, the children exhibit signs of distress, directly attributable to Mr. Langston's actions. Richard's gaze tightened. That was precisely what he was trying to avoid. Professional validation of emotional harm. The tension in the room thickened. Denise's relief was palpable, her fear of dismissal by the court was dissipating. Replaced by a growing sense of vindication, Judge Holt took a moment to observe. Her eyes swept across Richard, reading subtle cues. Shoulder tension, jaw compression, and eye micro-movements. Do you understand, Mr. Langston, that your actions have caused measurable distress? Richard nodded slowly. But the careful neutrality in his tone betrayed a man accustomed to shaping narratives rather than confronting them directly.
Yes, Your Honor,
he said. But here's where things began to escalate. Clara presented another piece of evidence. Internal messages Richard had sent to collaborators about the video's potential virality. Lines like, "This will get attention. Kids and parents will react exactly how we want. And make sure it spreads, engagement is key." A murmur ran through the gallery. That one small revelation shifted the entire perception. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't a poorly timed joke. This was calculated content creation designed to humiliate. Denise exhaled slowly, her composure slightly shaken, but strengthened by the court's recognition of intent. She whispered under her breath, almost to herself, "They see it now, they see him." Judge Holt's tone sharpened. "Mr. Langston, do you recognize the impact these statements and actions have had on real children, on their emotional well-being, and on their family's sense of safety and dignities?" Richard hesitated. That split-second pause was telling. He was weighing honesty against ego. Reputation versus legal consequence. Microseconds of decision-making revealed the complexity of his internal calculation. Finally, he replied, I understand, Your Honor." Notice that phrasing. It's careful, deliberate, and non-committal. Understand signals awareness without admission of moral wrongdoing. Classic manipulation tactic in high-stakes confrontations. Clara pressed further. "Did you intend for the children to be publicly humiliated?" Richard's hands clenched, the edge of the table, knuckles white. He avoided eye contact with Denise completely now. Finally, he answered at. "No. I didn't think about it that way." Judge Holt exhaled sharply, the sound filling the room. "Your perception is irrelevant, the outcome is reality. You chose to use your platform to mock a family. You are responsible for the consequences." At this point, the courtroom felt electric. Every person in the gallery, every camera lens, every social media feed watching the live stream, was aware that the stakes had escalated. This was no longer about a viral joke. It was a case study in intentional psychological harm, social media influence, and the intersection of public image and private accountability. Then the first of several expert witnesses on social media analytics was called. They began to trace the spread, showing how Richard's video reached tens of thousands of accounts within minutes. Then, millions within hours. Notice how he crafted the caption and visual cues to maximize engagement, the expert said. Every detail was designed to attract views, shares,
and
emotional reactions. Richard's smirk was gone, every subtle shift in body language betrayed calculation giving way to tension. He was being confronted with the reality that performance and manipulation could not shield him from scrutiny, in a room designed for accountability. Judge Holt's gaze locked onto him. "Do you see now, Mr. Langston, that what may have seemed like a joke to you had tangible, harmful effects on real children?" Richard's voice cracked slightly. "Yes, Your Honor." The children's trauma was no longer abstract. It was documented, measurable, undeniable, and Richard Langston's carefully curated digital persona was unraveling in real time. And this was just the beginning. Because the next evidence would reveal not only intent but the full extent of the psychological impact. And the courtroom was about to witness a viral scandal deepen in ways no one expected. The air hung heavy, almost suffocating, as Judge Holt signaled the continuation of the case. Every heartbeat in the room synchronized with anticipation. At that moment, everyone watching realized this case wasn't just about words on a screen. It was about control, influence, and consequences. And the story had only just begun.